Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. My name is George Abraham, and I am editor at large of Mizna. It is an honor to be here with these guests, but I do not want to call tonight's Words for Palestine event a celebration. I've been thinking all day about how to even introduce an event like this in a time like this, when, as I'm sure most of the folks tuning in right now know, the level of the intentional, deliberate, genocidal famine that the Zionist entity is imposing on Gaza is reaching an unprecedented and, quite frankly, irreversible level of harm, of suffering. This is really hitting home hard for a lot of us, including our readers tonight, two of whom are in Lebanon right now, and two of whom are in the US and are grieving Gaza from that distance. And um, and I just cannot mask that anymore. Um, and I think all the masks have been off for a long time, but they are really, really, really obliterated by now. Um, so instead of a normal introduction, um, where we just do the typical thank yous of sponsors, where we encourage people to donate to PCRF and Palestine Legal Fund, I instead want to begin by thinking about failure together and thinking about how donations to these organizations are failing because humanitarianism is failing. Um, and there isn't any way I cannot with good conscience say that there's any useful way to get money to Gaza right now than to give to people, to individual campaigns. And so, me personally, I will actually strongly discourage donating to any entity, any nonprofit entity right now, and instead say pick up the nearest campaign you find from Gaza and give your money there. If you don't know where to find one, I would recommend looking at Gaza Funds on Twitter, for example, that has many campaigns. I would also recommend looking at Mizna's social media, where we've posted a campaign from dearly beloved Ghazawi Palestinian poet and essayist Sara Aziza, who will be reading tonight. There's a direct tonight. The cutoff for this donation is tonight. There's instructions on how to donate to help Sada's family in Gaza right now survive this genocide and survive this latest escalation of starvation that again has been going on for so long. And I'll remind and re-remind everyone. I also want to take this moment to recall the words that Bisan posted yesterday, calling all of us to action, saying, "Bang the pots because the sound of our empty stomachs and the voice of our humanity must be louder than their brutality." I know personally, I live in Western Massachusetts, and there is a protest tomorrow at 4:30 p.m. in Amherst Town Square, where we are asked to bring pots and pans to heed Bisan's call. I know so many cities around the country. Look at your local PYM chapters, look at your Palestine Action Network chapters. I can guarantee you that within a reasonable distance of you, there is probably going to be a protest tomorrow. Join a protest tomorrow, please. Please call your elected representatives and demand, the only way that we are going to get aid into Gaza is if we force the US and the Zionist entity to let aid in. And so now is the time for direct action and to escalate our political actions. And so instead, that's the note I want to start this off with. And I think that that's the note that these readers who you're going to hear from soon inspire me to want to start off on, to honor the work of Fargo Tabachi, of Ahmed al-Mallah, of Huda Fakhreddin and Samar Abu Hawash and Ibrahim Nasrallah, all the folks she translates from Palestine, and of Sara Aziza, is to say, I love Palestinians enough to put my body in the way to end this genocide in this moment of, again, I don't even know what words to say, the darkest moment in our history. It always feels like this, and it has for nearly 2 years now. And much, much, much longer for some of us, for most of us. And with that, some of the only sanity I've had the past few days is finally getting Fargo Tabaki's print copy of Terror Counter in the mail. It's a book I've read in galley format, in pre-draft format. It's a book I love beyond words. It's one of the only readable poetry books released in a U.S. context this year. I will go on record and say that. And it is an honor to be introducing Fargo Tabaki as our first reader tonight. Fargo Nassim Tabaki is a Palestinian performance artist, the author of Terror Counter from Deep Vellum and Antigone Velocity Salt, which will also be coming from Deep Vellum in 2027. Thank you so much for being here, Fargo. Love you, friend.
Thank you, George. Yeah, that's about right. As George mentioned, I recently published a book. It's my debut collection of poems. You can, if you desire, order it from the Workshops for Gaza open books page, and those are both places in which you can redirect what funds you have to help keep people alive. But I don't feel like reading from that book tonight, so I'm not going to. I'm going to read one new poem that I've written, and then one very old poem that I have not written, that is written by someone else. Before I do that, I just want to add to what George said and say that you must give up your life in order to make this stop. All of the things that define your life, you will have to let go of. Whether that's money and security, whether it's being a good citizen of this world and of this country, whether it's having some kind of stability in your life, those things won't exist if we are to seriously consider what needs to be done. So just to say that. This poem is for a friend. Service. They are pleasant. This much I can guess. This much I can ascertain, peering from the stage across the thin membrane which separates us, membrane which is an agreement about our respective positions, their dowager needs, their Hyundais and New Balances, my ideation, passive, constant, my fright, smokes, mirrors, gentle coughs, murmurs of dinner, run time, the storm outside swelling, could get lightning. Some well-meaning blushes, the solidarity of their capillaries. They come from kind-hearted groups or from newsletters they eat every day. These aspersions I cast. I can see through their shapes to all the corpses standing quiet behind them. How to speak to those corpses without disturbing the rest. How to say the only thing worth saying to the only people who listen. What they pay or mostly don't pay for is to receive the thing I cannot give without consequence. Consequence I've lived in fear of my entire life on this earth. They want from me in ways I do not understand. I guess what to sign. What I want from them is elusive to me. It is a hole I know they can't fill, but I ask them to anyway. All I know. This asking without possibility of answer. Prayers to a divinity composed of twice mortgaged buildings, strongly worded letters, privation. Always the corpses echoed whispers, their feedback muffled by the bodies inside this room. These pleasant people are in the way. My straining to listen, to understand what the words do and don't, if the speech acts, where the heat is, why it is not ever where I am. They loathe what I need from them. I loathe that I need it at all, never having understood if I could belong for this world which takes from my speech permission to eat me, eats me for the rest of its life. And here I am trying to say some truth to people who have relinquished the possibility of hearing it. This life I've accepted as real. This work I've believed to be all. The dead surround the living are the core of the dead, yet here are not my living, unreachable my dead, only these miserable hands, their rueful applause. What I am to them I can't forget. What they are to me makes me sick. The truth, when the lightning comes, if it ever comes, I pray it strikes me, yes. Not that it strikes only me. Not that I leave here still lonely. I want to read a poem by the Lebanese writer Khalil Gibran, which I have been thinking about a great deal. I've been talking about it with George. It might make my reading a little bit too long, so I apologize. So this is by Khalil Gibran. Dead are my people. Written in exile during the famine in Syria, World War I. Gone are my people, but I exist yet, lamenting them in my solitude. Dead are my friends, and in their death my life is naught but great disaster. The knolls of my country are submerged by tears and blood, for my people and my beloved are gone, and I am here, living as I did when my people and my beloved were enjoying life and the bounty of life, and when the hills of my country were blessed and engulfed by the light of the sun. My people died from hunger, and he who did not perish from starvation was butchered with the sword. And I am here in this distant land, roaming amongst a joyful people who sleep upon soft beds and smile at the days while the days smile upon them. My people died a painful and shameful death, and here I am living in plenty and in peace. This is deep tragedy ever enacted upon the stage of my heart. Few would care to witness this drama, for my people are as birds with broken wings left behind by the flock. If I were hungry and living amid my famished people and persecuted among my oppressed countrymen, the burden of the black days would be lighter upon my restless dreams, and the obscurity of the night would be less dark before my hollow eyes and my crying heart and my wounded soul. For he who shares with his people their sorrow and agony will feel a supreme comfort created only by suffering and sacrifice, and he will be at peace with himself when he dies innocent with his fellow innocents. But I am not living with my hungry and persecuted people who are walking in the procession of death toward martyrdom. I am here beyond the broad seas, living in the shadow of tranquility and in the sunshine of peace. I am afar from the pitiful arena and the distressed, and cannot be proud of aught, not even of my own tears. What can an exiled son do for his starving people, and of what value unto them is the lamentation of an absent poet? Were I an ear of corn grown in the earth of my country, the hungry child would pluck me and remove with my kernels the hand of death from his soul. Were I a ripe fruit in the gardens of my country, the starving woman would gather me and sustain life. Were I a bird flying in the sky of my country, my hungry brother would hunt me and remove with the flesh of my body the shadow of the grave from his body. But alas, I am not an ear of corn grown in the plains of Syria, nor a ripe fruit in the valleys of Lebanon. This is my disaster, and this is my mute calamity which brings humiliation before my soul and before the phantoms of the night. This is the painful tragedy which tightens my tongue and pinions my arms and arrests me usurped of power and of will and of action. This is the curse burned upon my forehead before God and man. And oftentimes they say unto me, the disaster of your country is but naught to the calamity of the world, and the tears and blood shed by your people are as nothing to the rivers of blood and tears pouring each day and night in the valleys and plains of the earth. Yes, but the death of my people is a silent accusation. It is a crime conceived by the heads of the unseen serpents. It is a songless and sceneless tragedy. And if my people had attacked the despots and oppressors and died as rebels, I would have said dying for freedom is nobler than living in the shadow of weak submission. For he who embraces death with the sword of truth in his hand will eternalize with the eternity of truth. For life is weaker than death, and death is weaker than truth. If my nation had partaken in the war of all nations and had died in the field of battle, I would say that the raging tempest had broken with its might the green branches, and strong death under the canopy of the tempest is nobler than slow perishment in the arms of senility. But there was no rescue from the closing jaws. My people dropped and wept with the crying angels. If an earthquake had torn my country asunder, and the earth had engulfed my people into its bosom, I would have said, a great and mysterious law has been moved by the will of divine force, and it would be pure madness if we frail mortals endeavored to probe its deep secrets. But my people did not die as rebels. They were not killed in the field of battle, nor did the earthquake shatter my country and subdue them. Death was their only rescuer, and starvation their only spoils. My people died on the cross. They died while their hands stretched toward the east and west, while the remnants of their eyes stared at the blackness of the firmament. They died silently, for humanity had closed its ears to their cry. They died because they did not befriend their enemy. They died because they loved their neighbors. They died because they placed trust in all humanity. They died because they did not oppress the oppressors. They died because they were the crushed flowers and not the crushing feet. They died because they were peacemakers. They perished from hunger in a land rich with milk and honey. They died because the monsters of hell arose and destroyed all that their fields grew and devoured the last provisions in their bins. They died because the vipers and sons of vipers spat out poison into the space where the holy cedars and the roses and the jasmine breathed their fragrance. My people and your people, my Syrian brother, are dead. What can be done for those who are dying? Our lamentations will not satisfy their hunger, and our tears will not quench their thirst. What can we do to save them from between the iron paws of hunger? My brother, the kindness which compels you to give a part of your life to any human who is in the shadow of losing his life is the only virtue which makes you worthy of the light of day and the peace of the night. Remember, my brother, that the coin which you drop into the withered hand stretching toward you is the only golden chain that binds your rich heart to the loving heart of God. Thank you.
Just taking a moment. I think I've been returning to Ismail Khalidi's work, and his recent collected plays are what one of his plays is titled after that Gibran poem, and that kind of led me back to it, and how Fargo is one of the friends of mine who's encouraged me to read Gibran more, and that poem has been in my head for the past several months. We do not live in a world after Gaza that is the world they want us to live in. We live in a world in which we are insisting that even though dead are our people, we are insisting our people shall live. And I want every viewer still with us to carry that. Our next speaker, all the way from Lebanon, very generously tuning in again despite distances, technological difficulties, and everything. Um, is another poet who I think, like Fargo, when I think of this next poet, I also think about despair and the revolutionary potential of despair, and not completely just succumb, a despair that doesn't let us just completely succumb to power, but allows us to give up our lives, as Fargo has emboldened us and challenged us to do, um, so that our people shall live. Um, and I think that this next poet is also a very capacious dreamer, and his poems also grieve capaciously and with the whole of his self and body. Um, his name is Ahmed Al Mallah. He grew up in Palestine and currently lives in Philadelphia. His newest poetry collection, Wrong Winds, is out with phonograph editions. And like Fargo's Terror Counter, Mizna has recently published an excerpt of Wrong Winds on Mizna Online that we'll link to you in the comments. His other collections include Border Wisdom from Winter Editions and Bitter English from a university press that is holding him hostage. He is currently an artist in residence in English and creative writing at the University of Pennsylvania, another university that does not deserve his or any of our names. Um, thank you for coming here, Ahmed.
Hello, everyone, and thank you, George, for organizing and for inviting us all to be together in this very sad moment in the history of the Palestinian struggle. As I like to say, it's year 77 of genocide, and we are still here. And Palestine will be free, inshallah, in our lifetime. I want to start with a poem outside of the book Wrong Winds, and it's called Because You Wished For It. And because you wished for it, and because you is the object of love, you, yes, you, my enemy, into whose enmity I was born, you are my always, and I am the never you have tried to master. You who knows well how to feed my world destruction, you look for me in every second, and I am your every time. You know that much about me, and every you in your world is me, my many eyes open, close in the dark, that you'll never master or capture. Is it a piece of my body you've misplaced in your hiding? Am I the bone that eats at you? Because it was not enough for you to take my place. You repeat your massacres, and you can't stop, because if you do, you'll never be the you that you are. And because you wished for it, it's not enough to say, I'll never get you. There's nothing to get, or is there? You've mastered a language in pursuit of me. I commend you for it, and I condemn all your words. And because you wished for it, it is never fair to say and not say at all. You remains the object of love, and it's you that turns and twists my every gesture and returns my hate manifold. Blood turns to dust, bones turn to rubble, limbs and limbs and limbs without limbs, and father and mothers shedding limbs and color, without life and red and gray, and children unchilded, and the plastic white and blue, every time you realize that survival is my victory. All in disproportion. You can't love, therefore your hate is futile. You feel the world owes you an apology, though you never owned your hate, and this lack eats at you, you, who only knows how to feed my world destruction. And because you wished for it, you is the object of love. It is you that turns and returns my hate, the one you nurtured in every drop of sweat. And because you don't deserve my blood, you hunt after it like water. And with every breath, you catch yourself taking another step toward my murder. And because you wished for it, when walking north to nothing, Maria, the 4-year-old girl from Gaza, resides, you thought it never enough to burn me, dance like a devil over my remains. In the open, you thought I'd shrivel and die in the eye of the desert sun. You thought you have annihilated me, erased my identity, my history, my everything. But in vain, all your efforts, in vain you will remain, because a rebel doesn't wither, a rebel doesn't settle, a rebel is me. At the end, I say, I'll come for you one day. I'll come for you one day. I'll come for you one day. This is the certain unknown that keeps eating at your present. And because there are men under the sun and nothing shines in the dark, we know the unknown. We know it more than most. The future will be another line or another wall under the sun, where nothing is new, as the saying goes, where life is never. Nothing is new under the sun except us, who know the sting of history more than most, for us whose numbers linger in the sum, for us who see the old nest on bare branches, for us who hold no book of exits and entries, for us to whom no one listens, for us the echo is everything. Listen to our voices, return to tell you, because you is the object of love. I'll come for you one day. I'll come for you one day. I will read the first 3 poems from Wrong Winds. The first one is a poem after Ash-Shanfara, and it tries to engage the verse in دامية العرب ولكن نفسا مرة لا تقيم بي على الذأم إلا ريثما أتحول. But this proud, bitter self has no place in it for injury. It scorns till eyes turn toward another. Beyond those places, in the past I'll leave, setting out in me. The second poem in the book also ends with some of the verses that I wrote in Arabic about my mother primarily, and the fact of her death and disappearance from this world. And it's called Loose Strings. What does it mean to be a poet? Another Homer going home, trying to find one? Is it time to prepare? Here, another trip to that place, that first encounter with air. From the river I look to see and imagine the dark waters of that sea, where I've never been. Close to me, the birthplace of my mother, Yafa, Yazur. Strange facts hang in the vision like loose stings. And because we're helpless, we have to label everything and live with the fallacies of naming. And so, sigh after sigh, I sigh. تذكرت أمي والليالي الخوالية فما الصمت إلا صمتك الآن في الدجى وطيف خيال منك لم يأت جازيا فأصبحت أذكي نار يومي بعبرتي فما الشوق محمودا ولا الوجد شافيا. The third poem in the book is called Before Gaza a Fall. The sick leaves hang on tight. There are not enough numbers to occupy the count. Death does its work, disappears, and the sick turn to the ground. Then the river hits, makes way. Don't repeat, repeat. Pollen and dirt to the side. What holds the future? A nothing is not enough. Gaza had to go in numbers. And now you. Who are you? And that some where now lasts beyond never. At the construction site, memory and flowers, metal and wood. Some things fall too hard. Traffic above water holds the scene. Together, eyes think shots, boom, bullets. Did we have to predict the future? Birds drenched in filth. This is how the world works, breaks. And the moon, a half eggshell in the sky. I'll read another poem from Wrong Winds, and this poem strangely talks about books as wood, and I'm sure you've all seen the video of people in Gaza burning books, and one academic having to burn his collections of poetry in order to make fire. And unfortunately, this poem predicts that future. I say unfortunately because when I watched that video, that particular video of the academic burning the collected works of Nazik al-Malaika. The first thought that came into my head is I wish I never wrote this poem. But here I am reading it for you. When the world ends, as in the now, we'll have to turn books to their source and use them as burning wood. For now, I look at my stack of scrapbooks, mostly wood on wood, doesn't burn on its own. What will I part with first to keep warm or cook myself something? Because you can't eat a book, not for sustenance anyway. Or could I make a structure out of all my books? What would look like in that form? Would the words stick out facing the sky, or would they be dripping in on my head, on my everything? I don't know how to save myself. Anyhow, most of the time, I don't know mainly how to save myself from my words. I would want them all alive and well, or at once, all at once, burning.
Thank you. Thank you, Ahmed. I just WhatsApped you about the reading. Just our next reader, who is also with Ahmed in Lebanon right now, who is a powerhouse and someone who is the definition of what it means to be useful in academia right now. She is someone who is precedent setting and precedent breaking in the necessary ways. She is someone who has shown me a lot about what it means to be in academia and even have a shred of integrity, let alone humanity. Unlike 99.9% of academics, especially the so-called post-colonial studies academics. Huda Fakhreddin is a writer, translator, and associate professor of Arabic literature at a university that we should all be spitting on. She is the author of Metapoesis in the Arabic Tradition and the Arabic Prose Poem, Poetic Theory and Practice, and the co-editor of the Routledge Handbook of Arabic Poetry. Her translations include Jawdat Fakhreddin's poetry collection, Lighthouse for Drowning from Boa Editions, The Universe All at Once, selections from Salim Barakat with Siegel Books, and Palestinian, 4 poems by Ibrahim Nasrallah. She is the author of the book of creative nonfiction, Zaman Saghir Taht Shams Thania, A Brief Time Under a Different Sun, and a poetry collection, Wamin Thamma Al-Alam, and Then the World. She's a co-editor of Middle Eastern Literatures. Thank you for being here, Huda.
Marhaba. Thank you for this invitation. I am recording this ahead of time, so I haven't yet heard George's opening remarks. I'm sure that they will be beautiful and very touching. Thank you, George, and thank you to Mizna and the Arab American National Museum and all the other sponsors for making this gathering possible. It is an honor of mine to be here among these powerful Palestinian voices, Fargo, Sarah, Ahmed, and Samir. It is an honor to be marking the publication of these 4 books as resistance, revolution, and survival. And I hope that we will very soon celebrate them in liberation, in a liberated Palestine. I will be reading from a forthcoming book titled Ruins and Other Poems by Samer Abu Hawaj. And I will start by reading excerpts from Ruins, Atlal, which is a book-length poem published in 2020, but of course we are reading it now through the lens of Gaza, our only talal, our only ruin. And in this poem, Samer stands upon ruins as has every poet of Arabic since the beginning of time. He stands upon ruins in order to find voice, in order to contend with the present, to conjure up a past, and be able to imagine a future. The poem is made up of 3 movements. It reminds us of the movements and the tensions of the archetypal Arabic qasida, but of course it's a modern prose poem. This conversation with the tradition is one that Samer does well here. And I am reading excerpts from Ruin. Morning didn't come. I wasn't. I awoke to the mirage of a tear. The earth was ravished by memory ghosts. A dull glimmer like an ancient sun, like a sorrow-worn coat thrown over an empty chair. An orphan cactus stood at an imagined threshold where shadows silently slipped between 2 walls or 2 borrowed lives, where caresses faded into words, flimsy balconies, and bubbles. Touch was nothing but a pure lightness in the balance of air. And there were effaced footprints on the white pillows, whitened eyes fixed on the neglected curtain, late-night whispers choking on a rose's neck, sighs quivering in flowing waters that continue to fall on ancient, grief-stricken wood. These stones won't speak and they won't go away. These stones won't speak and they won't go away. But the light will persist, falling on the absent, the broken, and the devoured, as if an immortal wolf gnaws and gnaws at what's left of this wall, returning it to the primordial howl. A dream erased a dream, and both were erased by yet another dream. Nothing remained after that but a trace, too little to stay, too much to fade, and not enough for us to call it a cloud or a stone. In the sudden, surprising distance between the rise of a wave and its fall, in the sudden, surprising distance between the rise of a wave and its fall, I see the ghost of a child like me, and I call out to him, my friend, Ya Sahibi. Time was, time wasn't. Time was, time wasn't. Another obscure spot glows to the point of blindness on this wall, then disappears. I gaze at it from afar and call it my life. Other names in ashes, ash names, the ash of names, an alphabet of mud, mud letters, a wall of letters, a wall street, a wall city, a wall mountain, a wall family, a wall we carry wherever we go, like a heavy suitcase that we open every now and then, the way we open a window, a door, an eye, hoping we'd find by chance our glances scattered on the white pebbles. In the city of speaking walls, I was a long farewell, counting the skipped breaths. I was a farewell rising with each breath, I was a farewell rising with each breath. I was a breath fading with each farewell. I was sand contemplating itself in the mirror, like this old window stuck in a cat's yawn, since the noon of that distant thing we call yesterday. Here and there, an abundance of things, ruined by much abandon. The book also includes 6 poems in addition to Atlal, 6 poems that Samer wrote after the start of the genocide. 5 of them have already been published in different magazines and on different platforms, including Mizna. And they have also appeared in Samer's latest poetry collection titled From the River to the Sea, Min al-Nahri ila al-Bahr. The 6th of them is a new poem that will first be published in this volume, both in Arabic and in English. From these poems, I'm going to read 2 excerpts from my favorite poem, From the River to the Sea. I will read the opening in Arabic and the ending in translation. And this is a poem that I have often returned to in these past 650 and some days of genocide. We have read it in protests and at vigils, and there's something that holds us in the way language falls apart and returns in this poem to its primordial function, to name things, but also to claim them, each and everything. From the river to the sea. كل شارع، كل بيت، كل غرفة، كل نافذة، كل شرفة، كل جدار، كل حجر، كل شجن، كل كلمة، كل حرف، كل همسة، كل لمسة، كل نظرة، كل قبلة، كل شجرة، كل عشبة، كل دمعة، كل صرخة، كل هواء، كل رجاء، كل دعاء، كل سر، كل بئر، كل صلاة، كل أغنية، كل موال، كل كتاب، كل ورقة، كل لون، كل شعاع، كل غيمة، كل مطر، كل قطرة مطر، كل نقطة عرق، كل لثغة، كل تأتأة، كل يما، كل يابا، كل ضوء، كل يد صغيرة رسمت في دفتر صغير شجرة أو شارعا أو بيتا أو قلبا أو عائلة من أب وأم وإخوة وحيوانات أليفة، كل شوق، كل احتمال، كل رسالة بين عاشقين وصلت أم لم تصل. Every mirror, every peg, every bench, every shelf, every dream, every illusion, every hope, every disappointment, every hand holding another hand, every hand alone, every scattered thought, every beautiful thought, every terrifying thought, every whisper, every touch, every street, every house, every room, every balcony, every eye, every tear, every word, every letter, every name, every voice, every name, every house, every name, every face, every wave, every grain of sand, every street, every kiss, every image, every eye, every tear, every yamma, every yaba, every name, 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 every name. From the river to the sea. Shukran.
Wow. That poem is one that I've read at many protests, actions, classrooms, even brought into spaces insurgently. It was one of the last that Noor Hindi and I added to Heaven Looks Like Us, and when alongside Huda's amazing translation of Ibrahim Nasrallah's poem Palestinian. And reading it was just like, this is exactly what our last chapter needed. It's a late in chapter book, and I bring Heaven Looks Like Us into the space for many reasons, because one, the title Heaven Looks Like Us is from a Fargo Tabaki poem. Two, the chapter Bitter English, which also begins with a Fargo Tabaki poem, is titled after Ahmed al-Mullah's poem from his first book, also titled Bitter English. And of course, Huda being three, Huda being invaluable to Noor and I finishing this project, and four, our cousin of the anthology, our final reader, Sara Aziza, is not in the. Sadly, we could not trick Sara into sending us a poem, unfortunately, but she is a cousin of the anthology who has supported it, and we both recently appeared on the Palestine Book Awards long list, and now Sara is moving on to the short list for her immaculate memoir, The Hollow Half, and it's just an honor to be here with you despite such a difficult time. Sara Aziza Shihia is a Palestinian American writer, translator, and artist with roots in Ibdis and Deir al-Balah, Gaza. She's the author of The Hollow Half, a genre-bending and genre-breaking work of memoir, lyricism, theory, and oral history exploring the intertwined legacies of diaspora, colonialism, and the so-called American dream through and as the Palestinian body. Her work has appeared in so many places that do not deserve her, alongside let's see what's the good ones. Misna and The Nation, among others. And it is an honor to have you here, friend. Thank you.
Thank you, Habibi. Thank you all for being here, and thank you, Fargo, Ahmed, and Hoda for your sharing. It's hard to follow any of those folks, let alone all of them, but I'm here. I'm going to be reading a little bit of prose, and to be honest, it was really hard to show up today. It was really hard to garner momentum personally behind the title Words for Palestine today, because I feel like we're so far beyond words, and I ask myself every day and continue to ask myself, what can words do? And I think all three of the previous readers asked and also gave a sort of answer to that question. So I'm kind of glad I'm going last, because I felt bolstered by all of their beautiful examples and beautiful words. Although I did have the thought when we were hearing about the books burning, that, if it would feed someone, I would send my books to be burned too. But we have what we have tonight, and maybe I'll walk away from this place heeding Fargo's words to change our lives until this ends. And maybe I'll understand that this world has ended and must end. And I guess in that spirit, I'll read from close to the end of my book. It's The Hollow Half, as George mentioned. Excerpting prose is just a little more complicated, but you don't really need to know anything, because this is a more essayistic passage. So I'll jump right in, and I'll just read for a few minutes. And yet I feel it in the soil of me, how somewhere I have always sensed this, the haunting in our happiness, a rumbling in the ground beneath, a shadow crossing the wrong way. Another set of ghosts, the figures of our foregone futures, and ever-present otherwise. Sometimes they stole into our flesh, a shiver, a reverie, a midnight flight to Gaza, where, on a balcony, someone's mother is pouring tea. Insistent, small and exorbitant transgressions of the real. Come daylight, their marks lingered on soft patches of our skin. Perhaps if our language had allowed, we might have uttered what we'd seen, calling our phantoms in daylight and letting others overhear. Perhaps we'd find our secrets rhyming, combining incitements to desire and discontent. To do this would be a violence against all tamed forms of hope. A heart once well fed is twice as hard to starve, and shelters may be revealed as prisons with a single glimpse beyond. I'll pause here to say that's for us. May we see that our shelters are prisons. May we look beyond. Here, hollow optimism must redouble or die. Wrote Murid Barghouti, in this moment of sorrow of mine, I see the Israeli apartheid wall as strong and immortal. His lament was corporeal and full of ghosts. His body had known Palestine before the Nakba, lived a lifetime before the wall. And like every Palestinian, his body knew the land willed always toward open skies. This, his ground of being, from which Barghouti viewed the wall. With this vantage, no occupation, however brutal, could be accepted as fate. And so his lament continues, branching defiance out of sorrow. But I am confident, he writes, that the wall will disappear one day. This wall will be demolished by our refusal to become used to it. It will be demolished by our astonishment at its existence. What if despair were this? A bracing bewilderment. The lie of the ordinary perforating, exposing the horror beneath its skin. Yes, need not mean only defeat. Despair could also be the moment we name the distance between our bodies and their dreams. The scandal of this chasm and its many vicious walls. Brazen, brutal, banal, astonishing. I'll read a little more from slightly later in this chapter. For years, I have despaired secretly. Mine was a hopelessness so global that it felt meaningless and cliche. Yes, the human world is ruled by riches and atrocities. Yes, history is drenched in blood. Yes, the future looks like climate Nakba, class catastrophe. I kept these convictions quiet and burned with my hypocrisy. I was embedded in the structures I decried and worse, lost faith in alternatives. Disciplined into believing critique was illegitimate unless it mapped a straight line to reform. Reform, a word that is itself captive, built inside the status quo. But what if the first word hope utters is no? What if this word is not only a negation, but an opening? After all, if this word is forbidden, can any choice be free? Refusal is the shorthand for what can't be named within the conceptual field of enclosure, declares Saidiya Hartman. It expresses our unwillingness to be conscripted to man's project or world, the propertied earth. And if the first field of knowledge is the body, no may be the sound of our deepest knowing, calling from the far side of the wall. Gaza, is devoted to rejection, wrote Mahmoud Darwish. Hunger and rejection, thirst and rejection, displacement and rejection, torture and rejection, siege and rejection, death and rejection. Enemies might triumph over Gaza. The storming sea might triumph over an island. They might chop down all its trees. They might break its bones. They might implant tags on the insides of its children and women. They might throw it into the sea, sand, or blood, but it will not repeat lies and say yes to the oppressor. Unquote. The honesty of Gaza is a glory born of curse. There, violence wears no bureaucracy. Progress, a lie thrown bare. Pretense is reserved for the realm of nation states, where the right to kill is indexed as lawful governance. Paradox is required when the objective is both dominion and innocence. But Gaza is made to stand outside this formulation, rendered abject and barbarian, a warehouse of excess native flesh. Every frontier needs its savage, the reviled other as foil for colonizer or field for conquest. Sentenced to this unlife, Gaza can only exist as no. This no is total. She is long past the desperation of appeasement or appeal. Gaza, called al-Muqawma, mother of resistance, daily births her refusal to succumb or disappear. Writes Darwish, when we meet Gaza in a dream, perhaps she won't recognize us because Gaza was born out of fire. The relationship of resistance to the people of Gaza is that of skin to bone. Raised at a remove from her, I too marveled at Gaza. Her aura breathed warm in family sitting rooms, pulsing in stories, the touch of palms and cheeks. On television, I ached over images of Gaza at peace. My father's beach teeming with swimmers, silhouetting children against a liquid sun. But in my eyes, these glimpses were always warping, marred by outsized suffering. My love for her was wistful, often limp, always stricken by a sense of helplessness. Israel's siege accomplished more than punishment. It convinced me and most of the world that Gaza was, if not depraved, then irrelevant, left behind. But what if the precise opposite is true? What if our future begins on such forsaken strips of land? Perhaps nothing is more haunting than to know Gaza's sky is our own. There is no innocence for us who dream ourselves separate from her fate. We are co-substantive, creating and sustaining entwined realities. The distance between us is more temporal than material. Gaza is racing ahead of us, showing where our trajectory must lead or end. I won't follow you to the land where there is greenery, water, and lovely faces, wrote the protagonist in Ghassan Kanafani's short story, Letter from Gaza. Addressing a friend who had left the strip for the bright shores of California, he declares, "No, I'll stay here, and I won't ever leave." Here, the story's narrator compels us to imagine the world in reverse. What would change if Gaza were not excised from our horizon? What if my map had always had her at its heart? Would I have subjected my dreams to the same discipline, banishing my discontents, throttling my inner no? Or might I have grown up unruly, unwilling to accept borders drawn by force? When presented with the captive promises of English, I might have made refusal my mother tongue. Rejection turned not on myself, but against a killer's world. Gaza's suffering is not theory, never poetry or myth. It is flame. I cannot know how it burns, but I can offer my imagination as student to hers. Out of the queerest of spaces, the ugliest of beings, the most extreme forms of abjection, beauty and revolution abound, notes Palestinian writer Tariq Baqouni about Gaza. What will we know when we move toward the margins, sacrificing poison comfort, learning from the abject and the queer? Perhaps we will find a relentless woman digging thorns out of her field. No, her weapon and her seed. Banished from the brutal order, mother of resistance, of those who dream beyond. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. It's been such a privilege to see Sada's memoir in different contexts like classrooms, socialism, book launches, now this, and each time I think about how our words as Palestinians, like once we publish them, there's already like a temporal sort of, I don't know, warping, I don't know, for lack of a better word, that's happening. Every time I hear these words with different distance, I see something different. And it hasn't been that long since the book came out. And I already feel like I've seen the book experience so many different life cycles in a way. And I think a lot about Fargo's book too, having seen these poems in the world for several years in many cases, and what rereading a poem like Spiders on a day like today means. And that's a small quote from it that I wanted to kind of leave our viewers with. I think faith is knowing there's a better world, and hope is the moments it breaks through into this one, like a fang piercing my skin, like one of the strings breaking and puppet flesh spilling out into realness. I don't know how to fly. I'm stuck web-like. The earth tells me something about faith every single moment of every day. And I also want to think around what Sada said about Gaza's suffering not being a metaphor, Gaza's suffering being real and material, and her cousin Nabil, who wrote this beautiful letter for us that Sada did a literary translation of in Mizna titled "It Was All Songs," which I'll link in the chat for everyone. At the end of this letter, Nabil says, "I remember well during the last truce how I went back to my bedroom. It was still undisturbed. All the books I loved to read were still safe. My pictures, well, they had some dust on them, but they were still beautiful. Everything deserved an embrace. Everything. I tidied up my office, cleaned my bedroom, and slept in the 7 nights of the 7-day truce. It was like a remedy bringing me back to life. Regretfully, I had to leave all my books behind. I couldn't bear to make the choice between my beloveds, so I left them all. Give them back. Give us back our beds. Give us back our offices. give us back our books. Then someone asks me, what do you want? I want an espresso. He looks at me and asks, what? Nothing. How much is the cheese today? Nabil S. Nusayrat refugee camp in Khan Yunis, January 4th, 2023. And I'll use this to remind everyone to look at Mizna's social media for through the end of the day. We will be collecting donations to send to Nabil and his family in Gaza. And you can look at the details on that on our social media. They will be gone tomorrow morning, so we can have a cutoff to send. And a reminder to get involved in actions tomorrow. The day after tomorrow, the day after, the day after, the day after, the day after. I'll leave everyone with these final words from Comrade George Jackson. I'm reading his Soledad Brothers letters collection from prison. And in 1970, George wrote, "International capitalism cannot be destroyed without the extremes of struggle. The entire colonial world is watching the blacks inside the US, wondering and waiting for us to come to our senses. Their problems and struggles with the American monster are much more difficult than they would be if we were actively aiding them. We are on the inside. We are the only ones beside the very small white minority left who can get at the monster's heart without subjecting the world to nuclear fire. We have a momentous historical role to act out of, if we will. The whole world for all time in the future will love us and remember us as the righteous people who made it possible for the world to live on. If we fail through fear and lack of aggressive imagination, then the slaves of the future will curse us, as we sometimes curse those of yesterday. I don't want to die and leave a few sad songs and a hump in the ground as my only monument. I want to leave a world that is liberated from trash, pollution, racism, nation-state wars and armies, from pomp, bigotry, parochialism, 1,000 different brands of untruth, and licentious, usurious economics." And that was 1970. And I think a lot about the rhymes between that moment and today, and what our kin in Gaza are looking at us and asking us to do for tomorrow. And I will leave you with that. Thank you all so much for watching. Please do what all you can. I don't have words left. Thank you.